The stars stretched endlessly before the hull of the Orion Valiant, a research vessel that had once carried scholars, explorers, and diplomats across the spiral arms of the Andromeda expanse. But today, its mission was perilous. I, Lieutenant Eric Vey, had been assigned to deliver an urgent diplomatic message to the court of Empress Zalara, ruler of the Dominion of Etheris, a civilization so vast, so secretive, that even the Federation's archives whispered of its reach in hushed tones. The Orion Valiant docked at the outer orbit of Zalara's capital, a planet-sized station that glimmered like a black diamond against the void. I had seen depictions of her court before, the obsidian spire, her throne room carved from a single meteoric crystal. But seeing it in person was something else entirely. The structure was alive with energy, hums of power resonating through its veins. Even before meeting her, one could feel her presence radiating across the corridors, a shadow of command and danger. I stepped onto the docking platform, my boots clicking against the dark metallic floor. The air here was different, heavier, almost electric. I was escorted by a cadre of her elite guards, humanoid yet alien, their eyes multifaceted, gleaming with intelligence and alertness. Every step I took was measured, calculated, as though the floor itself might betray me. At the end of the corridor, massive doors parted with a hiss. The throne room lay beyond, vast and impossible. A crystal dome reflected the cosmos outside, and in its center sat the Galactic Empress herself. Zalara was everything history had described and more. Tall, regal, her armor shimmering like a nebula, and her eyes. Oh, her eyes were galaxies unto themselves, swirling colors I had no words for. She regarded me not with curiosity, but with the weight of a civilization's judgment. "You are late," she said, her voice a melody of power and danger. The sound reverberated in my chest. I could barely breathe. I apologize, Your Majesty," I stammered, bowing deeply. Diplomacy was one thing, but being in the presence of the Empress herself felt like standing on the edge of a supernova. Her attendants murmured among themselves, shifting like living shadows. One of them, a tall figure with translucent skin and eyes that glowed silver, stepped forward. "Shall we begin the audience?" Zalara's gaze didn't move from me. "Yes." "Bring him closer." I walked forward, each step echoing against the vastness of the chamber. The closer I came, the more I felt her presence pressing against my mind, probing thoughts I didn't know I had. My palms were sweating. My heart raced like a star about to collapse into a black hole. Part 2. The whisper middle rising tension. I had rehearsed my words for hours, every diplomatic phrase, every acknowledgement of her power. But as I knelt before her throne, something in her presence broke through the formality. Her eyes searched mine, and I saw not malice, not conquest, but isolation, a loneliness so profound it seemed to stretch across light years. Before I could stop myself, the words slipped out of me, quiet, unplanned. "You are beautiful." The chamber froze. Even the hum of the energy veins seemed to pause. Zalara's armor glinted, but her posture shifted. A tremor ran through her, subtle yet undeniable. She inhaled sharply, the sound almost inaudible over the vast emptiness of the room. "No one has ever spoken to me like that," she said, her voice trembling. Not with anger, but with something I hadn't expected. Vulnerability. The attendants recoiled, some bowing instinctively, unsure whether to protect her honor or mine. I stayed where I was, unable to move, afraid that any gesture might shatter this fragile moment. For a long while, Zalara merely stared, and in that gaze, I saw centuries of conquest, wars, and isolation. She was a ruler of a galaxy-spanning empire, feared by millions, yet the simple truth of being seen, of being acknowledged as more than her title, seemed to touch her more than any victory ever could. "You dare speak to me as if I were human?" she asked finally, a whisper that carried more weight than 1,000 fleets. I do not know how else to speak to someone who carries the weight of stars on their shoulders. I replied. My voice shook, yet it carried the sincerity of someone who knew the universe could crumble, but honesty remained eternal. Zalara's hand twitched. It hovered over the armrest of her throne. A faint pulse of energy radiated from her, enough to flatten the ship, yet she held it back. Her eyes softened ever so slightly. The revelation, middle, climax. Days passed, or perhaps hours. Time flowed differently aboard the obsidian spire, where light bent and corridors curved in impossible geometries. Zalara summoned me repeatedly, each time asking questions not about politics or war, but about myself, my home planet, my dreams, the fleeting emotions that humans take for granted. I discovered that beneath her armor of power, beneath her icy reputation, Zalara had never known friendship, never known trust, never known someone who looked beyond the throne and saw the woman beneath. And I could see her entirely. One evening, as the twin suns of Etheris dipped below the crystalline horizon, I found myself standing on a balcony with her. The void stretched infinitely before us. But for the first time, the galaxies didn't feel intimidating. They were beautiful, yes, but fragile like her. "Why do you look at me this way?" she asked, her voice softer than the hum of the city below. "Because I see you," I said simply. "Not the Empress, not the Conqueror. Just you." Zalara trembled again, this time not from surprise, but from emotion. She had never been touched by words that weren't layered in politics or fear. And now, one human, fragile, mortal, insignificant in the scope of her empire, dared to pierce through the veils of her existence. She stepped closer, and I felt her presence, her warmth, even through the anti-gravity of the balcony. "No one has ever spoken to me like that," she whispered again. Her hand brushed against mine, a gesture so gentle that it threatened to fracture the barrier of decorum we had both clung to. Part 4. The conflict middle, tension peaks. Not everyone welcomed this new intimacy. Her council, her generals, her advisors, they feared it. To the galaxy, I was just a human, a species considered weak, disposable, laughable. They conspired, whispering in the shadows, warning Zalara of the dangers of affection, vulnerability, of trust in someone so insignificant. One night, the spire shook. An explosion rocked the chamber. I was thrown to the ground, debris raining down, alarm screaming. I struggled to my feet, searching for her. Zalara appeared amidst the smoke, her armor scorched, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen. The council had attempted a coup, seeking to seize the empire and then any threat to tradition. I ran to her, shielding her from a shard of metal. She looked at me, recognition in her eyes, and for the first time, she let herself rely on someone else entirely. We fought side by side, our combined skills and trust turning the tide of the attack. After hours, the chamber fell silent. Smoke curled from the walls. The council had been subdued, and Zalara stood beside me, breathing heavily. She looked at me, not as an empress, not as a conqueror, but as someone who had just discovered the value of human courage, of connection. Part 5. The connection ending resolution. In the aftermath, the court slowly adjusted to the idea that Zalara, the Galactic Empress, had chosen a human, not as a servant, not as a weapon, but as a companion. I was elevated, yes, but more importantly, I was seen. We walked the corridors together, not as ruler and subject, but as two beings who had found each other in a galaxy that rarely allowed for such fragile truths. One evening, beneath the crystal dome of the throne room, she turned to me. Eric Vey, you have changed the course of my existence with a single truth. No one has ever dared to see me, to speak to me as you have. I smiled, though my chest felt heavy with the enormity of her words. And you have shown me that even an empire, even a galaxy, can still feel human. Zalara stepped closer, her fingers brushing mine. The tremor that had defined our first meeting returned, this time of anticipation and possibility, not fear. Then perhaps, she whispered, we shall walk this path together, not as ruler and subject, but as two beings who dared be seen. We stood there amid the cosmic glow of distant stars, and for the first time, the Empress was not alone. The galaxy could tremble, fleets could rise and fall, but in that moment, there was only truth, only connection, only the fragile, enduring spark of understanding between two souls. And I knew that as long as I remained by her side, as long as my voice continued to speak what others dared not, she would tremble no longer from fear, only from the beauty of being seen.